you're saying evolution, and you say evolution by natural selection, let's just call that Darwinism because that's what it is.
Okay, let's call it Darwin.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because evolution as an idea existed for thousands of years before Darwin, and it was used in English from the 1600s, right? So evolution is different to Darwinism. I don't have a problem with evolution. Now, when it comes to, you asked a very good question, which is we have all these independent fields and they converge on a Darwinian explanation.
Sure.
And I don't deny that. But the only thing which I'm going to point out is all of those subfields, they also can be used to converge upon alternatives. Okay, so let me just give you an example. We have biochemistry, right? We have genetics, we have anatomy, we have psychology, we have sociology, we have biogeography, we have the fossil record, we have paleoanthropology, we have all these fields.
Yeah.
Each single one of them you could use to actually come up with evolution by self-organization. Or rather than the tree of life, you can come up with the web of life or the hedge of life, or you can come up with an alternative topology. So Darwinian evolution is kind of like this, and this is one of the examples it gives in a journal called Science. It's called the paper's called the Politics of Paleoanthropology. It says to try and reconstruct the history, because Darwin believed in the tree of life, is kind of like working out the plot of Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace with 13 randomly selected pages, right? It's very difficult to try and come up with a retrospective history when 99.999% of species are extinct. We don't have their fossils, we don't have their DNA, and this is according to the National Science Foundation, a study published last year. So because of that, I don't disagree with you that you can use those subfields to come up with Darwinism as one explanation, but I could just turn around and say that's one amongst many. So what makes you sure of this over evolution by self-organization?
It's falsifiable.
So is evolution by self-organization, and all the rest of them.
Yeah, but that's the meaning. There are certain criteria in this theory that scientists agree that would falsify completely what they say. Meaning, again, going to the usual thing, a rabbit in a stomach of a T-Rex or something like that, right? They haven't lived according to the theory in the same time.
That wouldn't falsify Darwinism. That would not. Even if there was a rabbit found in the Cambrian period or pre-Cambrian period, that would not falsify Darwinism. Because Darwinism, it is a mechanism which leads to X to Y. Yeah, so even if they found a rabbit, it wouldn't disprove Darwinism.
It would disprove the way evolution works, right? So
no, it wouldn't.
Because their tree comes, mammals in the tree come way later than the reptiles.
Yeah. So all they would do, if that happened to be the case, is they rearrange the branches of the tree, and they do that all the time. To rearrange and to, like, the way that they come up with the tree of life. When they have a particular species and they assume that this is related to that, and then they do further studies and they're like, okay, we assumed because of homology this is related to that, but it makes sense that this is more related to this. So they have these small changes, but those big changes, like finding a mammal in the pre-Cambrian, that's not happened. But if it was to happen, that wouldn't disprove Darwinism. That wouldn't disprove it.
At least it would disprove the theory that they have about the way the species develop. Yeah, it will disprove.
Yeah, but it's kind of like
they would have to think about a different way to and that would be a little different than what it is.
Very different.
Very different, correct.
But only different in its structure, not the mechanism of natural selection. Because remember, Darwin didn't come up with homology. Similarities due to common descent. He came up with natural selection.
I concede this to you, and even if the structure changes, right, it will still necessitate the change, while in the same time, what is written in Quran and Bible, we have all this evidence, but they say no, it doesn't change. It's the way it is. But we change it because we have sort of evidence that point us in a certain direction, right? So. And then,
the reason, what you're actually referring to is the tree of life, right?
Okay.
When it comes to the Quran and the Bible and its claims about species and how they change, the Quran is silent when it comes to most of biological life. But one thing the Quran does make clear is human chimp ancestry is not true. Okay? In terms of a whale having a lamb-like mammal as a precursor to it, there's no, we have no reference to say that that's wrong. But what I'm actually saying is, assuming I'm not Muslim, I'm not Christian, I'm say an agnostic, I have no belief.
Yeah.
I would be saying the same thing, which is, fair enough, we have this tree of life which is constructed in all those textbooks and you've got these nice branches. And I would say almost all of the scientists, not all, but a lot of the scientists would say it's true. It's true. It's true as in it's generally accepted among scientists. But none of them would say, one, it's absolutely true. None of them would deny it's based on a probabilistic framework.
Okay.
None of them would deny it's based on the assumption of homology. And none of them would deny that there's conceptual problems with that framework. These are all accepted by all of them.
Okay. Now let's go.
But do you know that?
And I understand what you're saying, and I agree on that. But then, isn't this a better way of viewing the world we're living in?
Yep.
As to having, let's say, 75% certainty, not certainty, but 75% proof, and 25% of what something, a belief that is true, rather than
we covered this a bit before. I think there's a bit of a mistake. There's no such thing as a 75% book. It's either a book or not a book. Science doesn't give you 75% certainty. Science gives you workable models which are falsified. That's all it gives you.
Okay, but why should I then, as a agnostic, should I believe? Is there a reasonable reason why I should believe more than what Quran says than what decades of studies have been done in science? Okay. Well, which model should I take as my framework of thinking about the world?
That's actually a false dichotomy. You're hitting something which is a workable model in science, which doesn't give you certainty, and you're taking some beliefs which come from metaphysics, essentially, which is the belief in God and the belief in religion and whatnot. These are two different paradigms. So if you want to talk about, say, science, there's nothing wrong with you saying, I believe in Darwinian evolution as a scientific theory. There's nothing wrong, and I'm not even going to challenge you on that.
Okay.
The challenge is if you say it's absolutely true, right? The science doesn't need to care. Or if you use that and then you say, because of that, therefore this is wrong.
No,
but if you were just to hold that belief, I would say to you, good day, sir. Good day, sir. And I would say, yeah, no problem at all.
But you see, I cannot believe that humans came up from a common ancestor, which is the theory that scientists have. Common ancestor with apes, and in the same time believe that they were created by a creator in an instance, and that female was created from a rib of a man. These are beliefs, conflict. And then I have to choose on which one do I believe, right? Because I cannot have this cognitive dissonance of having two different ideas.
Now you've asked the right question.
How I got to?
As long as, and you have acknowledged this, which is fine, that what science has given you in terms of human chimp ancestry, and human ape ancestry, and religion is claiming that they were created in one instant. Now you have something which is a workable model, which is generally accepted by a majority of scientists, and is based on a probabilistic framework and with assumptions, with conceptual problems, but it's still something. Okay. Then you have a claim which goes counter to that. So your question is, why would I choose this over this?
Yes.
And my answer would be, then what we have to do is we actually have to elevate the conversation to where do we get certainty from in terms of epistemology. Because when it comes to this particular junction which you're at, which you're walking at, which is, I know it's not certain, I know it's got whatever, right? It's probabilistic framework with assumptions, but it's something, human chimp ancestry, and religion is claiming this. Now what we have to speak about is if there is a God or not. Because if there is a God, and there's good reasons to believe in a God, and the Creator has given us evidences that He has sent revelation, then we have reasons to choose this. But there's no such thing as choosing this over this, because this doesn't claim certainty anyway, when this does. So all the question really boils down to is this: is there a God, and is the Quran the word of God? And that's the conversation we should be having.
How did you come to believe that what Quran says is true, and there's a God, and Allah is God? How did it come?
Okay, everybody goes on their own journey. My journey, I would say, I could never deny the existence of God. It just didn't make sense to me. In my 20s, I came to a junction where I was kind of like, so many different religions. If I was born in a Hindu family, I'd be Hindu. If I was born in a Sikh family, I'd be Sikh. You know the rest, right?
Yeah.
So I was confused. And then I had to do my own sort of research. I couldn't deny the existence of God. But for me, that was just like there, right?
Yeah, it's not a falsifiable argument.
Well, you can't falsify logic. Not everything has to be falsifiable, right?
Okay.
But for me, it made absolute sense that there's a creator, right? So when I looked at different religions, one thing which stood out for me, and everybody has different experiences. Some people have subjective experiences, some people want to go with proof. One thing which stood out for me, which was phenomenal, was that the Islamic conception of God is one, it's universally been accepted at different times in different periods of the world, which is that there's only one creator who's worthy of worship. And when I looked at other religions, it was kind of like, in Christianity, God is described as a bit of a human being, and you worship God through Jesus, and
three
in one and all this, right? And also in Hinduism, you have pantheism and whatnot. With Islam,
but the Jews have one God, isn't it?
They do, and we do believe originally the Jews and the Christians, we all come back from Abraham, right? But Islam, it taught me, and one of the statements really stuck to me. What I was taught was that whatever you imagine, that's not God.
Okay.
And God is not a human being, and you should direct all acts of worship and gratitude and thanks and praise to God alone. For me, that was the first evidence, and there's a few more, but one which I want to mention is that throughout time, these people came who were known as prophets. They came at different times. And if you look at different religions, the prophets pretty much said the same thing, even though their books may have been different. For example, Jesus never said, worship me. He said, worship God. Moses never said, worship me. He said, worship God. Even when you look in the Hindu religion, the avatars, the people who came from God, they used to teach not what they teach them now. Even in, I believe it is actually the Vedas, it's like the Quran for the Hindus. It mentions God is one, and don't make idols and don't make images of God. So it made sense that God would send these messengers all across the world. But if I came up to you and I said to you, do you know what? I'm a messenger from God, the first thing that you have a right to ask me is, how do you know?
Yes.
How do I know? Now, if I bring out an ID and I say to you, this flashing card, this is my evidence, or I do a miracle, I do this, you have reason to believe me. But if I don't, you have no reason to believe me.
True.
Now the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he came with a message which was, I am a messenger in a long line of messengers, and there's been 124,000 prophets. And the amount of messengers, maybe 1 million, billion, we don't know, endless, right? And he said, I'm the last of them, and he made a few claims that if those things happened, we know that he's a messenger. One of the things which he said, which is recorded in history, and we even have evidences for what happened from the Romans, from the Persians, from the Indians, from the Chinese, which is this: the Arabs were an ashtray of the world, right? At that time in the 6th century, they were described by one historian as Eskimos. Like they were just these little group of nomads. They were wedged in between Persia, the Romans, and the Yemen Empire, right? Now the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said in Medina, which is the city where he passed away, when they were surrounded by their enemies and Islam was only in one city, and he was digging in a ditch, and there was a big boulder, and he struck it with an axe, and he said, God is great, and he told the people that you people are going to conquer Persia, and you're going to conquer Rome, and you're going to conquer Yemen. Now one of the historians, the British historian, he said this is equivalent of a bunch of Eskimos saying they're going to take on Russia and they're going to take on America. And after he died, do you know what happened? Exactly that. The Roman Empire was crushed and the Persian Empire was crushed. and the Yemenis empire was crushed, and Islam spread to that whole area. And he also said, that's about that time. He said near the end of time, the barefoot Arabs, the Bedouin Arabs, you know, the poorest of them, not even the city dwellers, they're going to build buildings which are going to be, they're going to compete with each other in tall buildings. In the world today, the tallest buildings are built by people who 70 years ago were barefooted shepherds. Even here in London we have the Shard, which is the biggest building in Western Europe. Who's it built by? The Qataris, who 70 years ago were barefooted Arabs. And he also said that before the end of time, this matter, Islam, this will enter every single house on earth. And I'm not saying that's happened right now, but that's a prophecy which will happen. And if you look in the world today, there's no country, no city, no village, except that they would know, at least, even if they don't believe, they would know that there is a man who claims to be a prophet whose name is Muhammad. And this man, when he said this, he was in one city in the 6th century in the middle of nowhere. And I can give you dozens more. And obviously Speaker's Corner is not the place where you do research about religion, it's just a place for discussions. No, but I would say these for me were evidences.
Okay. So he made some claims that were hard to imagine that they would happen, and based on that, he made the assertion that he has some divine intervention in his life. He has word of God. Okay. What if? Well, I would say Jews apparently would have that kind of assertion.
They do.
Yeah. So why is it?
And we do believe in that. We do believe in Moses.
But why is it Allah different than the God of the Jews?
Okay, that's a good question, because it's a common misconception. Jews, Muslims and Christians, we all believe in the same God, the God of Abraham.
Yeah.
If you go to Egypt, and Egypt is I think 10% Christian, and you go pick up a Bible in Egypt, it says the word Allah, and they use the word Allah. Now, whether you say Allah, or you say God, or you say Gott in German, whatever, we're all referring to the same creator.
Okay.
And it's just the one God. Are you from a Christian background yourself?
Yes.
What led you away from, say, religion? Or your Christian faith?
Well, I had so many questions when I was a kid, and nobody seemed to have a decent enough answer. And I saw so many things that doesn't seem to be according to what I'm learning.
Sure.
That I decided it doesn't make any sense.
What about God though? Because you can believe in God and not believe in religion.
Yeah. Well, my position is agnostic, because you can't prove one 100%, you can't prove the other position 100%. So I don't know. And I'm not taking anything until I'm proven that.
Okay, but sorry, I forgot your name already.
Julian.
Sabur. You see, proof, Julian, is a very slippery term. We use it all the time. I'll prove this. I'll prove that.
No, I can tell you what is my proof.
Sorry?
I can tell you what is my proof.
No, what I mean is, there's no such thing in reality as proof. We just use the term as a replacement for maybe what's reasonable, right? Proof is not even in mathematics. Because you know yourself, in science doesn't give you proof. Philosophy doesn't give you proof.
Well, 2 plus 2, I can say it's 4, right?
Yeah.
And then
now, somebody could also say 2 plus 2 is 4, but is the world real?
that doesn't say anything about the reality of the world, indeed.
Well, they could say in another dimension maybe 2 plus 2 is not 4. You have philosophers saying all sorts of crazy things, right?
Yeah.
So proof is a very difficult thing, and it's an ideal. We would love to. I want to see God like I can see the sun, right? But what I want to give you as a criteria that you use to come to Speaker's Corner, and you use to catch a bus, which is using a reason, using a rationale, what makes more sense. So I don't think agnosticism, sitting on the fence, is certainly better than atheism, but I think it makes more sense to believe in God, even if you don't believe in religion. The reason why I'm saying that is because all around us We have design. We have complexity. And human beings, when we get into trouble, there's an inner nature which comes out. So there may be somebody who's like, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in religion, it's all nonsense. But as soon as they get cancer and they're dying in a hospital, they call out to God. And many people have these experiences.
Yep.
And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught us that the human being has an innate nature. And that innate nature, he knows God exists. Even psychologists today at Oxford University, such as Justin Barrett, he recently published a book called Why Would Anyone Believe in God? Right? He's a secularist. He's got no religious bias. He's an Oxford University professor. And what he basically says is this: we're hardwired to believe in God.
Yes.
And likewise, Dr. Olivia Petrovich, again at Oxford, she says atheism is an acquired position.
Oh, but do you know where it comes from?
They claim...
No. The idea of being wired to believe in God.
There's different theories, but I'm gonna give you the Islamic conception as well. One of the theories is that it's a survival mechanism, right? That we somehow need it to survive. Without it,
no, it's not somehow. There is some hypothesis on how.
On how.
Yes.
But then, at the same time, a lot of people would say religion actually leads to violence. So how on earth is it a survival mechanism? Secondly, some people claim, it's something to do with genetics, something to do with intelligence. Islam gives you an answer, and you can decide to choose the answer or not choose the answer, because the Quran makes it clear: whoever wants to believe, believe; whoever wants to disbelieve, disbelieve.
Yep.
That we have this innate nature which God put inside us, and when we get into trouble, that's when this nature comes out. That's the Islamic conception.
Okay.
And what Quran and Islam basically teaches is this: we are on this earth for a reason, and we have a purpose, and we are going to have accountability in the hereafter based upon what we do in this life. But if you were to say, look at both theism and atheism, under atheism, our conversation is a rearrangement of molecules.
Yeah.
At best. What's the difference between me taking a hammer and smashing the head of a chocolate bunny, or me smashing my own skull? It's the rearrangement of matter. There's no meaning, intrinsic meaning, value, hope. There's nothing.
Yes.
So doesn't theism make more sense?
And no, for me it doesn't.
Okay.
And I'll explain why. Then what is the sense? Okay, let's assume there is sense on this life, right, and on the earth, of living according to a book, to a set of rules, and then going to heaven. And then in heaven, what does that happen? What other meaning does the heaven give to you? You're just living, right?
Okay.
What is their intrinsic
we need to untangle
meaning to be there?
Sure. We need to untangle two different things. I'm going to answer your second question first, and then we're going to go back to the original point.
Yeah, and I have a couple of points that I want to go, but that's okay.
Now, the reality of this world is different to the reality of the hereafter.
Okay.
So what God says is that heaven is what the eye has never seen, what the ear has never heard, what the human heart has never reflected about. So when we speak about another dimension, there's no point, because it's beyond our recognition.
Yeah.
Now the question which we can talk about is it real? That's what we can talk about. Now, since we're talking about meaning, Julian, me and you having this conversation, we're not speaking gibberish, are we? We have a meaning, we have a structure. We both have the ability to reason. Now, we have the ability to reason, but if we are a product of a blind, natural, mechanical force with no foresight, how do we have the ability to reason, and why are we conscious and sentient beings?
Well, I can explain that at some point, one of the individuals, by a mutation again, right, acquired an extra intelligence that he could pass on to his offspring.
Due to survival?
Yeah, because he was more intelligent.
Sure.
Then every other generation was able to think much more and think much more clearly. And the important thing is hypothesize. Because you can ask some people, even these days, living in a small village and somewhere in like close to North Pole, and you ask them, what do you think would happen if the beer was not white but black, for instance? And they cannot imagine it. They don't have the ability of hypothesizing.
It's beyond their paradigm, yeah.
Because they are used to just the real world. And that's what happened. You know, one thing happened this way. One thing, just one small thing every single generation, and we got to the point where the extra consciousness we get compared to the animals just brings us to this conversation. Now, going back to the one idea that you mentioned.
Sure, but what you said there, it's correct in terms of an evolutionary explanation of survival value.
Yes.
But it's not correct as even an attempt in terms of truth. Because natural selection, it sees survival value, it doesn't see truth value. Even Steven Pinker, who's an atheist at Harvard, he's recognized that if what you're saying is true, which is actually an evolutionary hypothesis,
yes,
that rationality evolved as a survival mechanism,
yes,
he's realized, and so has other academics, that you can just as well survive on false beliefs as you can on true beliefs. And since you can survive on false beliefs just as well as you can survive on true beliefs, then how can you distinguish between the two? You can't. So what you just said is an explanation for human beings having survival value in terms of their cognitive capabilities, but not truth. And we're speaking about truth.
Okay, let's go again. Then I would bring a counter argument to what you said about creation, design. I think you claimed that there was a design, it's complexity.
No, but let's deal with this issue first.
Okay, so
the truth. We're speaking about truth, and we believe truth is objective.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Okay. And look, either this book exists or it doesn't exist.
I see it now.
Okay. So there is such a thing as truth.
Okay.
Our minds, we have the concept of truth. We're trying to arrive at truth.
Yes.
So natural selection only primes your brain for survival.
Yes.
It doesn't prime your brain for truth. It doesn't see truth. It doesn't care about truth. It cares about survival and reproduction. So we're speaking about truth. How does truth arrive in a world of natural selection?
My hypothesis, I think, works because but I will explain why.
Sure.
The truth-seeking is also, I think, a good way of surviving.
That's exactly what the hypothesis is. You've put it in different words.
Yeah, but
the thing is, the hypothesis that you're talking about, I'm not unaware of it. We actually have published studies on this hypothesis. But the proponents of the hypothesis, not you, not me, the proponents of this hypothesis, they themselves have said, you know what, guys? It can only give you survival, it can't give you truth. And nothing you can say in this conversation is going to add to the original hypothesis, unless you're a scientist or something.
Again, I'm in the position of agnostic, right?
Okay.
You claim a certain thing,
I claim there's truth.
which is said by Allah.
God.
Now, how do you know that is true?
Okay. Now, firstly, when it comes to God, one of his names is Al-Haq, the truth. So because God is the truth, us having the concept of truth makes sense. Secondly, we as human beings, under the agnostic worldview, the atheist worldview, we're here to survive and reproduce, survive and reproduce, survive and reproduce. But right now, we're involved on a Sunday afternoon speaking about God, philosophy, theology, metaphysics. Nothing to do with survival and reproduction. You're not helping my survival and reproduction right now.
Well, maybe you can get a girl somewhere around here, and then that helps, right?
Say I can't have children, right?
Okay. But just a second. But that is the point of evolution, right? Passing on the genes. It's not necessarily that you live indefinite. It's that you pass your genes to someone.
No, I get that. But right now, most of our psychological and our social behavior is not due to survival and reproduction.
Oh yeah, we've moved beyond that.
We're way beyond that.
Yes.
So this is why philosophers such as David Stove, who is an atheist philosopher of science, he wrote a book called Darwinian Fairy Tales, and he basically says this. He's an atheist, he believes in natural selection, not natural selection, he believes in naturalism, and he basically says human behavior and our psychology makes no sense under a Darwinian paradigm because we do so many things which are un-Darwinian. a human being sits on a rocket on 50,000 tons of fuel to go to space. That doesn't help his survival and reproduction. You have monks, like for example Isaac Newton, brilliant guy, intelligent guy. Do you know his greatest achievement according to him?
What was it?
He believed his greatest achievement was not physics, it was that he died a virgin. Right?
Okay.
How on earth does that make sense from a Darwinian paradigm? It doesn't.
Yeah,
So under the concept of God, human behavior and our search for truth and our rationality makes sense because God is the truth, God is the knowing. From the knowing and from the truth, we human beings are a product, and we also are knowing and we also have truth.
Okay, but there are also mechanisms to explain this curiosity and things that you're saying are counterintuitive, going on a rocket on the moon and going, poking a bear or something like that for just the sake of it. And it is this that the brain is wired in that way that it craves this knowledge. It is basically painful if you're not distracted. If you're living just on your butt and you just eat and you just feel genuine pain in your body. So and this is not because I'm not trying to. It is a genuine mechanism through which we evolved to become this developed society. If we weren't curious enough to poke a bear or try the honey or other things, we would have not got here. I mean, saying that seeking truth is a sort of like a divine calling that
it's not.
God ascribes.
Look, I don't
think it's
disagree with anything you've said there except for the last point. Of course human beings are curious, and of course being curious leads to natural selection, selecting for that trait.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that. That's complete red herring.
Yeah.
What we're actually speaking about is the concept of truth. Forget survival for now.
Okay.
The very idea, the ideal of truth. Why do we even have the term truth if it's all about survival and reproduction? And by the way, this isn't a problem I pointed out.
Okay.
Even mainstream.
I've heard this theory before.
And the thing is, you will find atheist philosophers of science, people who say, we're just doing this on a Sunday. They do this all their lives, right? They do the stargazing and thinking, right? Yeah. The most, I would say, well-known philosopher of science in the world, one of the most well-known, is Alex Rosenberg. He's an atheist. And he's publicly admitted, and he's an atheist evangelist, he sits with Richard Dawkins, he sits with them, he's publicly admitted naturalism, which is atheism, has no explanation for the origin of reason. And that's all I'm leaving it at. Unless you can say something in this park which hundreds of years of debate have not solved. We can't.
No, but you see, I see the value in looking for a certain truth. But I don't understand why are you saying that, you can't believe something false and still be successful surviving. Yes, that can happen, but it's not a sustainable method for millions of years.
Okay, I'm not making this claim. I'm regurgitating the claim made by academics.
Oh, well, then I might disagree with the guy, and there's probably academics saying that they disagree.
But well, actually, you will not find any academic who would say that every single human sociological, psychological trait is due to selection. You will not find anyone saying that. Even the most ardent people like Richard Dawkins, even they wouldn't say that. Because they know, for example, he himself, he was writing in his book, The Selfish Gene, that, he believes that it's all about genetics, passing in your genes.
Yeah.
And he says that we must teach altruism, right?
Okay.
Because we are hardwired to be selfish.
Yes.
Now, what he's basically doing is he's facing cognitive dissonance here, because he believes in Darwinism and he believes in selection and he believes in genes, and then he's importing an external concept like altruism, and he's saying we're hardwired to be selfish, but we need this altruism thing. Well, my question is, where the hell did this come from?
Oh, I can tell you.
Okay.
My theory is that, look, we grew up to be social animals, right?
Yep.
We grew up to be with dads, mums, and parents and children. And if you are genuinely 100% selfish, you cannot be a social being. You cannot rely on someone, taking care of your kids. You cannot rely on someone helping you out, build a shelter, and so on. And so, we are selfish. We are wired to be selfish. But by the time we get to an age like, I don't know, 5, 7 years, we understand that we cannot work with other people unless we are altruistic in some way. And altruism is also a selfish thing to do, because you're doing it with the idea that someone is paying you back. So I don't see contradiction in this.
I'll show you where the contradiction actually is, and the contradiction's not been pointed out by me. It's been pointed out by academics for years, which is what you're referring to is known as kin selection and reciprocal altruism.
Yes.
Reciprocal altruism is, I scratch your back, you're going to scratch my back eventually.
Yes.
Kin selection is, I'm a cave guy and I found an apple tree and you carry half my genes because you're my brother or something, right? And I want you to basically survive because you carry my genes, therefore I'm going to be altruistic.
Oh yeah, that's also...
Now the problem is, that's explaining the problem in terms of genes. And the problem is altruism and the existence of altruism. And to say that altruism is selfishness in disguise, which is what you just said.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Right? That doesn't solve the problem. That just gives a label to a mystery. The mystery is human beings have altruism, pure
innate.
altruism. Innate.
Is it a gene for it?
Innate, nurtured, that's irrelevant. We do things, and I'm sure you've done them too, which don't help your survival and reproduction in terms of your kin, and nor in terms of reciprocation. For example, you must have, I'm sure in your life, given charity to someone in the world who's not related to you.
No.
And they can't reciprocate because you gave it anonymously.
But you know what?
Answer that question. Therefore it's wrong.
Well, but you know what it gave me? A satisfaction and a genuine pleasure that I was able to do that.
Sure.
And that is a selfish motive for me to do an altruistic...
That's kind of like hedonistic entropy, right? Yeah. Now, that's fine, you can say that, but people, not every single person helps someone because it makes them feel good. Some people believe, like, we have Kantian ethics, right? It's just my duty to do it, and I shouldn't even feel good about it. And this is not an issue which I just brought up. This is well known in academia that altruism makes no sense under a Darwinian paradigm.
I would disagree with that. I think
it's them, it's not me.
Well, there might be some guys saying that, but I would go on a limb again on this one and say that most people that understand Darwinism, evolution of societies also, they can probably say altruism is a way to go, because a society
I don't,
and you can see it in apes.
Look, we totally agree altruism exists everywhere. It exists even in ants. You have sterile ants, right, who all their life they're upside down in the colony holding something up, right? That's altruism. That's not an issue. The issue is not the existence of altruism or should we be altruistic. That's fine. The issue is we have the existence of true altruism, which makes no sense under Darwinian evolution because it's not selfish.
What do you mean true altruism? 1% of Buddhist monks who have done Vipassana for 20 days and then they realize they want to do good things just for the heck of it?
No. Let me repeat that.
Because that would be a true altruism for me.
Let's go back to the foundation here. Does true altruism exist?
I believe it doesn't.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. I'm saying it does, and I don't think anyone who thinks about it really deeply would deny that we as human beings, we do want to help others, even if it's against ourselves. We have cases where human beings have put themselves in front of danger to save somebody who is not related to them, which cost them their lives. That is true altruism. And I can explain that as a Muslim because I can say God has not only given us rationality, but God has given us an innate nature that we care about each other, so much so that we put ourselves in danger for the sake of others. But from a Darwinian perspective, it's kind of like, screw him, I got my genes to pass on. And that's a Darwinian perspective.
And I think 99% of people would do that.
Yeah, they would do that, but truth is not democratic. Let's look at some concepts here. true altruism exists, and it's a counterfactual to Darwinism.
But then again, this true altruism works within Darwin's dilemma, because the guy that throws in front of the danger for someone
But
else
that's not
doesn't
true.
get his gene through. So he did a stupid thing, and he just doesn't.
Okay, so why would natural selection create that?
Well, a lot of things that natural happens to natural. No, wait. What if the guy has an extra mutation thing that at his birth, right? This is what it works. So I'm let's say, a super extra altruistic guy, while my parents are not. It's just going to be a result of mutation. Can it be?
You wouldn't have true altruism, you would have altruism in terms of genetics, in terms of genes. You want to pass on and survive. The thing is, look, it's kind of like this. If someone's in a quicksand and they're stuck, the more they move, the more they're going to sink in. From a Darwinian perspective, there is no such thing as true altruism. If someone does say, I believe in true altruism, which is not kin selection, not reciprocal altruism, the first thing I would say is, make sure you go down to King's Cross, there's the journal Nature, and go tell them you've discovered something, because no one's done it so far.
Okay, but what you're saying is that certain bad traits that do not help you in surviving, right? So you're qualifying according to Darwinism. To Darwin.
Look,
the altruism is a trait that doesn't allow you to survive.
No.
Effectively.
Altruism defined the way it was defined before Darwin, which is to do something for others.
Yeah.
Okay? Not for your own benefit, not for your genes, to do something for others. That is something which is a counterfactual, according to secular mainstream academics, against Darwinism. That's what I'm saying.
All right, but that means so let's say 1% of the population gets this. Does this mean, does it disprove then Darwinism and evolution? Does it disprove it? That 1% of the people are genuinely altruistic?
I'm going to use the word disprove now. Only in a symbolic way, because remember I spoke about, forget the word disprove, counterfactual.
Yeah.
Metaphysically, forget science for a second.
Yeah.
Philosophically, we can speak about morals.
Yes.
Good, right, wrong. If objective morals exist, objective wrong and objective right, objective good and objective evil, not in terms of genes or survival, and a small part of that good objectivity is altruism. There's also other good parts. The existence of anything objectively, morally, disproves, I shouldn't say disproves, is a counterfactual to Darwinian claims of survival and reproduction being the sole purpose of human existence. The highest rationale, according to Darwinists, is to survive and reproduce. That's the highest rationale.
Yes.
Not do philosophy, not do art, not speak about God on Sunday on Speaker's Corner. It's to hump and have kids. Basically, that's it.
Yeah. But all these things that we added up over time is, taking care of the kids, actually not just letting them go as turtles do, right? Or actually caring about the female we mate because we want to mate them with them the second time. All these other things actually helped us pass on the genes more effectively. And I don't see a contradiction between being moral and contradicting what Darwinism stands for. Because if I, as a ape back in the days, I would start beating everyone around me, so I would hump, right, and start beating females, starting beating everyone else. At one point, I think females will just start running away from me because they know I would kill them, right? So it doesn't.
Again, what you're doing is you're explaining altruism again in terms of survival and reproduction.
And it makes sense to me. I don't know why it doesn't for you.
Okay, does it make sense to you, or do you acknowledge that people do good things not for their genetics?
Yes, I do anything during this day today not thinking about my genetics.
Perfect.
Yeah,
so everything you've done today does disprove Darwinism? No, because that's all it's about.
It doesn't.
Okay.
So you think apes, in their or let's say other things, when people or animals procreate, they think about genetics. They have no freaking clue.
Of course they don't.
Yeah. So
when an ape, when it decides,
and this is not what Darwin claims, right?
Okay, wait. Let me just clarify two things here. You have an ape which combs the hair of another species, unrelated.
Yes.
Okay, that doesn't help it survive and reproduce. So it's a non-Darwinian behavior.
I can't agree with you.
Okay,
That's
so
it's a point I do probably we cannot agree.
Let's wrap up this conversation in terms of altruism on this. The existence of true altruism,
Yes.
and I'm just going to make a statement here, as a concept, as a observation, has been highlighted by secular academics as a counterfactual to Darwinian theory. That's just something which
I'll
exists.
look it up.
Okay,
I'll
so we'll agree that you're going to look that up, and that's what I found.
Okay, that's fine. That is fine. It's from my understanding of what is happening. It's completely, within the models of Darwinism and the evolution.
Read Darwinian Delusions by David Stowe. He goes over this.
Okay, I'll look it up. It's just I found it different.
Before I go, coming back, just one last thing about God. What would it take, say,
it can only exist as an atom, any shape or form.
are you looking for a sign? Are you like, what exactly would lead you to say, if I give you evidence of God, that was right for you, would you spend your life worshipping God?
Environment constituted atom.
Well, if it required that, I'll elaborate because I thought about it.
Okay.
And then I would like to ask you the question of, but you think in the meantime, of what would it take you to disprove God?
For me to disbelieve in God.
Yeah. So for me, again, when I'm saying, I'm agnostic, I don't know, and there might be or there might not be. There might be, of course, a God, a creator or something, but my strong belief is that he either doesn't care of what the hell am I doing on this world, or I'm a strong believer that, Bible or any other books, even if there exists some God, fails to properly, in my view, write about his thoughts. But then let's go back to the proof. So I thought about it, and the proof would be something along this way. I would have to see God, right? Whatever it is, it's either an entity, a spirit, or something. I don't know. I would have to have witnesses around me that can see the same thing. I would have to be able to film it, and I would have to film some sort of suspension of natural laws in order to believe that he actually has more power, extra power from a different dimension than what we see here. And I would say this is still not a 100% conclusive evidence, and I'll explain why. Any advanced enough technology can be considered as magic.
That's Clarke's third law.
True. And it would probably be true if I am going somewhere 5,000-10,000 years ago, and you
told them about the internet.
not necessarily internet, even something more
Electricity.
something more simple. Let's say I have this new stem cell research, and I have this spray that treats my burns, and apparently it's working.
Or I can take your fingertip and I can identify you, something like this.
Yeah, but something more simple that I can prove it to people. So so I burn my skin.
They think it's magic.
So I burn my skin, I spray it, and then in over, I don't know, a couple hours or even overnight, I could show them and it's healed, and they say, well, what the hell? This is definitely God magic or something, right? So even the evidence that I'm requiring, it's not exactly 100%. Okay, because it can be someone, it can be an extraterrestrial, civilization that is 10 times more smart and more intelligent.
I'm also assuming,
And so that would be something that would move me close.
I'm also assuming that when you say something like that, you may also be referring to, you ask for a miracle like the sun splits in two and comes back, or it writes your name, like something like you can see visually and it's beyond doubt.
And it can be, sort of proven that such thing cannot happen in nature.
And then would you believe? Like,
Yes,
would you believe?
yes,
Okay.
I would believe.
Now, what I would say, I'll give you the Islamic answer to that, because in the Quran it mentions that some people, they say, we want to see God. We want to like see God, right? Now the Islamic answer is this: the signs of the existence of God and the signs of worshipping God, right? Worshipping God alone, are all around us. And for those who are searching those signs, it's clear that this is from God. And Quran says, whoever wants to believe, believe. Whoever wants to disbelieve, disbelieve. Right? And the Quran says that God can send a sign that your necks will hang. Like you will literally be like, oh my God, this is from God. But then there is no free will. You have no choice.
Oh no, there is free will.
No, there isn't. There isn't.
No.
Because it's absolutely true. So let me just complete what I'm saying.
I will come
So, in the hereafter, when we die, in this life, we have the choice. Whoever wants to believe, they see the signs, they know for certain this is the truth. Whoever wants to disbelieve, Quran says disbelieve. No problem. And say, maybe chance, maybe this, maybe natural selection, whatever. When you die, that veil is removed. And it's clear what the truth is, and there is no free will. There is no free choice. And at that time, the human beings will want to go back and say, I wish I would have believed. So this world and the signs that are in this world, they are absolutely clear for whoever is sincere, and whoever is not sincere, whoever is not looking for guidance, whoever doesn't have that first, the same evidence means nothing.
Okay. I'll pause the. I'll keep that in mind and I'll respond to that. But then again, I would like to ask you, what would falsify
My belief in
Yes.
God.
Is there a criteria? Because I said it to myself,
Sure.
right? I'm in a genuine agnostic position,
Yeah.
and I said, if that happens, I'll believe it. While I would like to hear.
Now, in terms of the Quran says, and it has a falsification test in the beginning of the Quran. It says, if this is not from God, so if you can produce something like this, something like the Quran, then it's not from God. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of the linguistic miracle and the sociological miracle and stuff like this, but say if somebody managed to meet that Quranic challenge, then Islam is false. But in terms of me, of belief in God, which is different to the belief in Islam, because you can believe in God and not believe in Islam.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So now the question is about my belief in God. Belief in Islam, the Quran gives you a criteria for falsification. The belief in God, for me, is not something which is falsifiable. For me, it is not it is not an inference that I make that there is a God. That I look at this and then I say, it makes sense there is a God. So God is not based upon an inference of reality. God, for me, is an explanation of reality itself. So for me to think outside of that paradigm is non-existent. So my belief in God is not something which is falsifiable. It's not. Now someone may say, well, that's irrational, that's this. Well, I would say, your belief the world is real is not falsifiable.
No.
There's many beliefs which are not falsifiable. And there's many beliefs, and Aristotle knew this, that going back, if you question every single belief, you'll never have knowledge. There are some things that you have to say are true,
Yes.
and they are the foundations on which everything else is built. And for me, from the time I think I was about 7, when I had my first, when you start reflecting about the world or whatever, even if I left Islam, I would never leave the belief in God, because that was just for me a paradigm. And there's nothing outside of that paradigm. And I'm just being honest, it might sound irrational, but that's just me.
Okay. Well, I'm going back to the idea of free will, because you mentioned it. You said if the evidence that I said would happen,
Like you see hellfire,
like I see, you know,
hellfire, paradise, everything.
can film it, can corroborate it with other people.
No, not only that. You see hellfire, you see paradise, you see God, you see everything. Clear.
No. But I said about the evidence on this world right now, living. Like if
So you said you wanted to see God. That's what you said.
so, yeah, that's what I said.
So when you see God, how can you say there's no God? Well, you see God.
yeah, but well, I explained to you that it has to have some other way other than just coming and pretending is God. Because
But it's not pretending though.
no, but I told you, right? That an enough advanced civilization can come and have technologies that I don't understand, and they say, well, we're gods, believe, and start praying. But it's just technology that hasn't been discovered.
Okay, but look,
but in the current day, I said a sort of a ballpark argument, a ballpark conditions for me to start believing. And then you're saying, and then your assertion was, well, but that excludes your free will. Well, it doesn't exclude my free will because I made my decision of what will I believe when this happens, and that is my own will,
Okay,
right?
but when you see God and say the day of judgment is here, and the sun is close to us, and hellfire exists, and paradise exists, and angels are there, and prophets are there, and all of your deeds of your life are there, at that point, there's no time for skepticism.
Okay, let's admit, yeah,
Right.
indeed. If that all happens, I'll probably, yeah.
And look, now
there's God.
before we were talking about rationality, Julian, now we're speaking about supra-rationality, things which are beyond reason. Because there are things which are beyond reason.
But why?
Okay, you disagreed with me that there are some things which are the basis of knowledge which you can't question, or else you'll never have any knowledge. You'll have an infinite regress,
Yes, okay.
right? That's beyond rationality. That's supra-rational.
I
That's beyond rationality. We're not talking about rational argument anymore.
so because we can't imagine,
No, it's not to do with imagining. It's to do with.
it's because we don't understand it.
No, it's not even. It's because we do understand.
So how is it outside of rationality?
It's beyond rationality. So rationality would be like, where did this come from? Where did that come from? Where did this come from? Where did that come from? But some things in your knowledge have to be the foundation which are unquestioned. Because if you question those, you'll have an infinite regress. You'll never have knowledge,
Okay.
right?
We don't have knowledge yet.
So
We don't have knowledge yet.
Yeah, it seems like. So then, okay. But then but then
I haven't made my point. But,
Yeah,
okay,
but
the point
continue.
basically is this. Fundamentally, and this is what Islam says, whatever you have inside, your innate nature, in Arabic we call it the fitra, whatever that state is in, that state is going to be externalized. So if you internally, you have this innate fitra, this innate disposition of believing in God, believing in His messengers, but if you decide, no, I'm not going to believe in that, every single piece of evidence, which is evidence for me, becomes evidence against my worldview from an atheistic perspective.
again. So if I have this predisposition in believing in God, could you continue from this point so I can get the argument right?
Let me say it slowly, because it's
a little
quite
convoluted.
a little complicated. Human beings, fundamentally, we have an innate nature to recognize the Creator. And a human being can make the conscious decision, I'm not going to believe. And they will suppress that innate belief. And that innate belief sometimes comes out when you're dying in a hospital of cancer. Now, no amount of rationality can dislodge a person who has that position, that they don't want to believe in God. No amount of rationality, no amount of argumentation, no amount of evidence. The only thing which I can say is this. God says in the Quran, if you change what's within yourself, God will change your condition.
But you see, your assumption is that I choose to believe what I choose to believe, but I believe it because there's no evidence to believe it. You see what I mean?
what I'm saying
If you are bringing evidence, and I'm saying, well, I don't believe it because I just don't accept it. That's one choice. But I'm not believing it because I'm choosing it. It's just there's no way for me to believe it.
Let me put it in simpler terms. I think there is no better way than just to put it into the simplest term, which is this. Belief in God, which is a part of human nature, even though it's there within the human beings, we have the choice, as it says in the Quran, whoever wants to believe, believe, whoever wants to disbelieve, disbelieve.
Okay.
So I shouldn't compel you to believe, and you shouldn't compel me to believe.
Yes.
All we should do is recognize what the reality is.
Okay, I can agree with that. That doesn't. But that doesn't, in any way come to the truthfulness of your claim.
I wasn't making a claim. I was explaining what the Islamic position is about why people believe and disbelieve. This wasn't a point of argumentation.
Okay.
And I wanted to end the conversation there because I need to go pray.
That's fine.
But here's a gift for you. I don't know if you've ever read it.
No, I haven't actually.
The difference, obviously, between Islam and your previous faith is that we believe God is one. We don't believe in the Trinity. We don't believe God can become a human being. And the other thing which is very important in the Quran is this. And this is probably the only thing which we're probably going to agree on today. God says that whoever's searching for the truth, He will guide. So if you take the Quran, you read it, if it is the truth and you are sincere, you will be guided to it.
Okay. All right.
Great talk.
Amazing day.
Fantastic.
Thank you very